Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and here I like to explore the world of fountain pens, ink, and paper. And today, it is an ink day. And this one comes thanks to a great friend who knows my love of brown inks. Not too long ago, I got this bottle of Noodler's Gold and Limonite ink. And as it says on the label, this is the Eureka color of Colorado mining. When you're down in that mine looking for gold, this is the color you want to see. And this is an interesting brown ink because it does have that tinge of gold within a very earthy brown, and because it has some interesting characteristics which we will get to later in the video. This may be one of the most surprising, no, I think it is the most surprising chromatography I have ever done on this channel. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as I often do. Today, we will put this ink to the test. We will look at how it performs on various papers. We will do a water test. We will do dry times. We will do a chromatography, and we will do a swatch. And by the time we're done with this, you'll have a pretty good idea of whether or not this might be an ink that you would want to put in your pen. So let's get started. Today, let's start with the pen that I'm using in this test, and that is the Remu LY530, aka the Live in You Chinese pen. It is a beautiful brown resin, and if you haven't seen the review of this, you might want to do that. This has been a terrific pen so far. Reliable, great writing. Check out that review. Then we get to the bottle of ink. And one thing I like about Noodler's inks is that you really do get a good volume of ink. This is the small bottle, and it is 3 ounces of ink, and let me tell you, they fill this 3-ounce bottle right up to the very lip. That is one thing. If you've never bought one and you buy one of their inks sometime, just know, have it on a very flat, level surface, because when you take that cap off and it's a brand new bottle, they have filled it absolutely to the lip of that bottle. Another thing that I've liked is that even though you hear all different kinds of feedback about Noodler's inks, I have yet to have one. I have several, maybe closing in on a dozen different Noodler's inks. And I've yet to have one that was a problem. The ones that I have all have behaved well in my pens. Now that I should say I don't have Bay State Blue, which I think is a gorgeous color, but I'm a low maintenance guy and I just don't need in my life an ink with the reputation for hard cleaning that ink has. And that's a decision not based on fear, but just, sometimes I just have other things to do besides clean the ink off my hands, okay? And that's just me. It's just a personal preference, but I will say really cool looking blue. All right, now let's open up that bottle and you'll see what I'm talking about because I've only taken a couple of fills out of this so far. And as you can see the gold right there in that big bubble shining out from what again I'll call a very earthy brown. You can also see just how full this bottle is. I am not going to move this bottle while I have the cap off because it is still full. I filled the pen at least a couple of times, but it's still quite full. So just be aware of that if you buy a bottle. All right, let's see how it looks on paper. And first we have the Clairefontaine. And as you can see, with a fine nib, you get some nice shading. It's writing nice and wet there for the size nib that this is. And you can see, especially here where I smudge that, you can see a little bit of those gold tones. But it is mostly a brown ink. Again, it behaved well in the pen. It behaves well on this paper and looks great. Next, we'll look at the Pen & Gear Dot Grid Spiral from Wally World. And this has that same nice shading, no feathering whatsoever on this paper. You see a little less of the gold in that wetness test, but the ink performed very well here. No issues on the other side. Then we have our big box paper from Vietnam. This one comes from Office Depot, I think it was, and it's called Just Basics. And here again, nice shading, just a little bit of that hint of gold or yellow there in the wetness test. Nice and clean lines, no feathering issues. And on the other side, nice and clean. And then it's a Yush. Now this is a 100 GSM paper. It's off-white, really nice quality, brings out shading and things like that in inks very well. And it's a nice find if you can find it. Here too, we see about the same level of shading, maybe a little less than on the Clairefontaine, but no feathering, no issues. Clean on the other side. Then we go to a familiar paper from many of you. This is a Rhodia Dot Grid. And here again, About the same shading, about the same yellow in the wetness test, and it looks really good, no feathering, no issues, and nothing on the other side. All right, here we have Irriful paper. This is a Japanese paper, and it's one that is similar to Cosmo Air Light or Tomoe River paper, the old school stuff, and it looks fantastic here. Really good shading. You notice in the wetness test even more of that gold color, and I think more in some of the letters here as well. It looks really good. I think this is my favorite paper for this particular ink. Just gives a little bit more variation here on the Irriful, and of course, no problem on the other side. Now, since I've mentioned old school Tomoe River, well, I still have room in this sample here from Lochby, and I like how this ink performed here. So first, different pen. This is a glass dip pen and very wet, and I would say it's like a broad. And here we get something we don't get on the other papers, and that is a bit of sheen. So it's much darker. There's less of that lighter variation, but this was very wet in this sample. So you get a little bit more of the lighter by the time you get to the A, which is the end of my writing on that particular dip of the pen. You can see, again, quite wet, and you see that gold show up. But as you can see, there is definitely sheen in this sample. See it here in this third pass, especially on the ink swatch. Now, I don't know if we'll see that on the Clairefontaine. I have not done a swatch there just yet. We'll do that here in the video, but that does give you at least knowledge that it will happen on the right paper with the right wetness and with a wet writing pen. All right, but what about cheap paper? I'm wondering if I can use this on a piece of paper from my printer or from the office. Well, this is HP Multipurpose paper. Just picked this up at Walmart not all that long ago, and it's actually been, by the way, a good performing printer paper in terms of fountain pen ink in general. But how did it do with the Noodler's Gold and Limonite? It did great. Look at that. You've got shading on copy paper. That does not always happen, although it happened well with the Royal Flush Blue from FPR up there as well. And it looks really good. And look, no feathering. And look how nice and clean that light, thin line on the upstroke of that G is. Just perfect. And not, frankly, what I expect from copy paper, and not what I sometimes get from a Noodler's ink on copy paper. So this performed really well. And then you go to the other side and look at that. Nothing there either. Really well behaved. So it performed really well over a variety of papers, has done great in this fine number 5 nib in the Remu pen, and offered even more shading and variety and some sheen from a glass dip pen that was quite wet. So all of that, good to know and good performance so far. How about we do now an ink swatch? This is going to be pretty wet, I think. This is the first pass. Then a second pass. And now a generous third pass. We're going to let that dry and see if it sheens on the Clairefontaine here in a little bit. But you can see here very much the same kind of shading variety that you see in the written sample. Just makes this a little bit easier for us to see, doesn't it? How about we do now some dry times? Okay, I wrote that like I was doing a wetness test, and I just went ahead and tried it before there had even been 5 seconds. Let's try that again, 5 seconds. There's 5, still quite wet. 15 seconds, drier, but definitely not dry. And 30 seconds, nearly dry, not quite though. Whoops, hello, we won't do that one. Try 60. And 60 seconds, still a little bit wet, so more than a minute. It's not a fast drying ink. All right, we're gonna put that water on, and we're going to see how this performs in our wetness test, so that if you end up with wet notes at the coffee shop or wherever, you can know, will I be able to salvage a signature, a note, an important phone number, whatever. We'll let that sit for a couple of minutes and come back and see what we've got. All right, couple of minutes turned into 3.5 minutes, I think, because I forgot something to dab the water back up. First, before I even touch it, do you see what I'm seeing here? It looks like I've left water on a laminated sheet of paper. It looks like the water has made no difference whatsoever. Could that even be possible? Well, let's dab it up and see. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, So, full disclosure, I wrote this sheet probably a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, so that ink has had plenty of time to dry in this grid. But that's often true. I do that a lot of the time. I'll do 3 or 4 of these ink test sheets at a time and then review the inks over time coming back to the notebook. But I've never had this result. Check that out. None of that ink, or at least no measurable, visible bit of it, came up on that napkin. That is crazy. So, does it pass the water test? I have not reviewed an ink that passed the water test this well. It's like, except for the wrinkle on the page, it's like it didn't even happen. Fantastic. And this would be the only water-fast brown ink that I own. Now, that brings me to what I said earlier, which is a very interesting chromatography. And this is it. This is my chromatography. And let me just tell you, this is actually the second chromatography, because when I got the results the first time, I looked at it and said, well, that can't be right. I've done something wrong. But no, this is the chromatography for the ink. There's nothing there. Nothing happened. Okay? That is the line that I drew. And before the ink was even dry, I dipped this in distilled water. And even then, it made zero difference whatsoever. And again, I did this twice because I've not had an ink do this before. So there you have it. If you like brown ink and you want some durability, maybe some Noodler's Gold and Limonite should be in your future. Now, what about that swatch that dried on the Clairefontaine? Is there any sheen? I think it's hard probably to see here on camera, but if you look right here in this darkest part, there is. I can see it here in the lighting in my room, but it's not overwhelming. It's very light sheen. All right, what do I think about the Golden Limonite from Noodlers? I like it. This is a nice shade. Very natural, not too fakey, not too red, not too far into the yellow, greeny other direction either. A nice natural brown shade. And I think it complements the resin of this pen quite well. The shocking thing for me is the level of water fastness, because again, I just don't have brown inks that hold in the wetness test until this one. I like the shading of the ink. If you're thinking that you're going to have, like a gold edge to everything you wrote, as I think maybe some people expect, that's not going to happen. That's not really the color of the ink that this is. There are those out there, and maybe like Rome burning or something like that. But is it a nice ink? Yes, and it's performed well in this pen. So I've had it continually inked up with this ink ever since the test of this pen a couple, 3 weeks ago, plus whatever amount of time I had the pen inked up before I did the review. So maybe a month I've had this and a couple of fills at least. I've never had one dry start, which of course is the performance of both the pen and the ink, but never a dry start, never a dry out for sure, and no issues, no crustiness or anything like that when I've left it for a few days. It has been very reliable ink in this pen, and I've enjoyed writing with both the pen and the ink. So would I recommend this for somebody wanting a shade like this? Absolutely, I would. It's also a pretty good value. For most sellers, it's more than their typical bottle will cost at $25. But that's quite competitive when you break that down to a per ounce. Compare that to a typical 30 milliliter bottle of ink that's going to be anywhere from $8 to $15. And this is just over $8 for the equivalent amount of ink. It's quite competitive and a good deal. And I will say it takes me forever to work through one of these 3-ounce bottles because, you got to spread the love between all the different inks and the different pens. And so a large bottle like this is going to last me a long time, even as much as I write. And the ink is made here in the USA, which, if you're trying to avoid a tariff here and there, that could make a difference for those of you here in this country, or it could be the deal breaker for those in others. But hey, I like a brown ink, but I'm not going to step in that cow pie. We're not going to talk about that here. Anywho, do I like the ink? Yes. Thank you very much to the friend who sent that, because this is really a cool find. It wasn't on my radar at all, and it's turned out to be a really cool ink. And I'm still really impressed by this. Although, again, definitely wins the award for most boring chromatography I've ever done. What do you think? Is gold and limonite for you? Does your sample look like this one if you already have it? And since it was just Easter, yesterday, let me ask this question. What is your favorite Easter candy? Mine is the 1970s candy marshmallow-filled eggs that were probably made from nuclear waste, but were an awful lot of fun to find, except for that year that my grandfather hid some of them under the cactus with the rattlesnakes. That was that was an Easter to remember, wasn't it? Anyway, what's your favorite Easter candy? Share that in the comments below, and God bless you, and have a great week.